off, like this video, and subscribe.
Greatness personified. We hope everybody doing good today. Last week, UFC Fight Night 210, Cory Sandhagen versus Song Yadong. I wanted Song Yadong to win. Cory fought smart. He stayed out of danger. He made Song Yadong work on the feet. I think the referee should start the fight earlier than what they did. Obviously, like the longer the fight goes on with Song Yadong's cut opening up more, the worse it'll get in the fight and long term. Yeah, Cory fought smart. He proved he deserved to be in the top 5. One fight that stood out was the Gregory and the Sheedy Joakim fight. That fight was a war. Just as advertised, there was no way this fight was going to go 3 rounds. There was no way this fight was going to go 2 full rounds. Gregory going to be a threat in the UFC's middleweight division. So it was a couple guys who stood out. Joseph Pfeiffer, obviously everybody's talking about him. He brings it. He brought it against Allen. He was able to put him away in the first round. Anthony Hernandez had a great performance. His wrestling was better than what I thought it would be. He was able to get the finish in the 3rd round and prove a point. One person I'm hot on is Javid Basharat. This guy is on a whole different level. He's going to be in the top 10 one day. And the bantamweight division is the UFC's toughest division. I would like to see how he performed against other guys in the top 10, against the Umars and Ricky Simone. The card ended up being a really good card, really great card. I hated that Song Yadong lost. I wish he would have got a little bit more aggressive and actually it looked like he didn't have a game plan against Cory. Good performance by Cory Sandhagen. Philipe Lins versus Maxim Grishin. Philipe Lins. I watched a bunch of footage on him and he's a decent fighter. I'm not really impressed with him anywhere. I don't think he's great anywhere. I don't think he's good anywhere, but I don't think he's bad either. I think he's well-rounded. He's solid. But the thing is, technically, he's 1 and 2 in the UFC. And he's been all over. He's been in Bellator. He's been in PFL, which he won 4 in a row. Not a single fighter he beat is in the UFC. I am kind of impressed with him on the ground. Because one thing I noticed is he has good submissions, which he hasn't really shown it in the UFC, but he's decent on the ground. If I had to say what part of his game is the best, I would say his ground game. Yeah, but I'm not too impressed with his striking. His striking is not bad, but it's not good either. And that's the thing, like he was knocking out Jared Rosehart and Josh Copeland, and yeah, but these guys they're mediocre. Yeah, then he's really known for being embarrassed by a couple guys. He was embarrassed by Vadim Nemkov, and Nemkov not even known for his striking. He's known more for his takedowns. He do have power with his right hand, but he got embarrassed by Nemkov, and he got embarrassed by Tanner Boser. And Tanner it looked like he was light speeds faster than him. But I think the thing is, I don't think Philipe is a bad fighter. I just think that what he does and the style that he fights only works at a certain level. His opponent is Maxim Grishin. He's much more exciting. He's much more fun to watch. He has 13 wins, 16 by knockout. He actually has a couple submissions. He has 6, which is way more than a couple, and 10 wins by decision. So that's a lot of ways he could win. He can finish his opponent from strikes. He can submit them. He can win a decision. Stick to a game plan like he did against William Knight. Yeah, he fought William Knight. William Knight showed up like 12 pounds overweight. But Maxim fought smart. Even though I like William Knight, he's one of my favorite fighters. But Maxim was able to stick to a game plan, keep William Knight on the outside. He was a lot taller and longer than William Knight. So he was able to hit William where William was not able to hit him. It was kind of a little bit boring. He fought somebody dangerous. Yeah, but I like Maxim. Like, he has a lot of ways to win. One thing that stands out with Maxim is his hands. And he has real good footwork too. Like, he can stay on the outside. He has deceptive movement. So he can avoid shots from time to time. Where he makes his money is with his knockout power. He has a lot of knockout power in his hand. He can unload on his opponents and get them out of there. Yeah, but this fight is an easy one for me. He has 2 wins in the UFC. Philipe, he doesn't have not 1 win in the UFC. Philipe has to get this fight to the ground. I don't think he'll be able to. This fight, I'm going to go with Maxim winning a 3-round decision. Julia Stoliarenko versus Chelsea Chandler. I'm going to be honest with y'all. At first, I picked Julia, but then I looked at her UFC record. And I noticed she's 1 and 4 in the UFC. She won 1 fight in the UFC, and her only win was in her last fight against Jessica Rose Clark. And Jessica is 11 and 8. You never know which version of Jessica you get. She's very inconsistent. Julia, she's a ground game fighter. She's trying to get the fight to the ground. She has, out of her 10 wins, she has 9 by submission. Out of those 9 submissions, she got 8 by armbar. So she's real deadly on the ground. But one thing I don't like about Julia is her striking. She has power in her right hand, but she doesn't move her head at all. I think Chelsea Chandler is going to find that chin. But if this fight hit the ground, she has a high chance of winning. But I think Chelsea can stand up and avoid the ground. But you never know. It's tough to put money on fighters making the UFC debut because they may go out there and get destroyed. A fighter is a veteran if they won multiple fights in the UFC. Obviously, she only won in one fight against an inconsistent opponent. I don't really classify her as being a veteran. But her opponent is Chelsea Chandler. She's extremely powerful, extremely strong. Whenever she hurts her opponent, she goes for the finish. She didn't get the finish in her last fight, but she was able to control Courtney King and dominate her for 3 rounds. She's a southpaw. She has a lot of power in her left hand. So it's going to be powerful left hand versus powerful right hand. Yeah, I'm taking Chelsea on this one. I don't normally pick the fighter making the UFC debut, but I'm not too impressed with Julia, if I'm going to just be honest. Yeah, I'm taking Chelsea to win this fight by first round knockout. We got a fun one for y'all. We got Guido Cannetti versus Randy Costa. Fighter number 1, Guido Cannetti. One thing that stands out with Guido is prior to his last fight, he won his last fight against Chris, but prior to that, he lost 3 in a row. It was interesting because a lot of times when fighters lose 3 in a row, they get cut from the UFC. So it was interesting that the UFC gave him another chance. In his last fight against Chris Mutino, he does what Guido Cannetti does best. He stay on the outside, landed leg kicks, and that's really all he did up until when he landed his left hand. He has a lot of power in his overhand left, almost like Beneil Dariush. This is a real good test for Guido to see where he ranks in the UFC's bantamweight division. Because Randy isn't the most consistent fighter either, but he's only lost to Brandon Davis, Adrian Yanez, and Tony Kelly. Those are tough guys, especially Tony Kelly and Adrian Yanez. But this is a good test for Guido. Sometimes he's impressive, other times he's not impressive. Other times he really don't pull the trigger. Sometimes he's content just fighting on the outside, throwing leg kicks. His opponent is Randy Costa. Randy 6-3. The thing that stands out with Randy the most is he has a lot of knockouts. Out of his 6 wins, all of them come by finish and come by knockout. I like Randy's style. He's long and he's tall for the bantamweight division, but he likes to keep his opponents at bay and throw punches at wild angles. And he also has real good head kicks. But the thing is with Randy, he doesn't have the best cardio, but he showed it against Adrian Yanez. In the first round against Adrian Yanez, he outstruck Adrian 57 significant strikes to 33. But after the first round, he was done. He wasn't visibly tired. He wasn't the most fatigued like we've ever seen, but his movement didn't look the same. His combinations didn't look the same. His power wasn't there in the second round. That's the thing with Randy. He's used to knocking out all his fighters in the first round because all his knockouts come in the first round. This is so weird. Randy's never been in the third round his whole MMA career. So if I'm fighting Randy, I'm getting him to the second and third round where he's less dangerous. I would like to see Randy pick his shots better. Sometimes he can get too aggressive and kind of gas out a little bit. I would like to see Randy have a game plan, pick his shots, get to the second and third round and win those rounds. But my prediction in this fight is I'm going to go with Randy winning by first round knockout. We got Krzysztof Jotko versus Brandon Allen. I always thought Krzysztof Jotko was a little bit overrated. Let's go and look at his record and see who he beat. One thing I realized with Krzysztof Jotko is he beat a lot of people who were kind of washed up. Tyler Slatus, come on now. Misha Serkinov, that he's been in the UFC a long time. But look who he beat. Tamdan McCory, Scott Askham, Mark Andre. These guys not even in the UFC, which the Gerald Meerschaert fight is impressive. But the thing is with Jared Meerschaert, Jared has one way of winning. And he can be kind of one-dimensional. And if you go and look at the Misha Serkinov fight, it looked like Misha won that fight. Because how they both land 41 significant strikes, but Misha has 5 takedowns. And his control time is 4 minutes. Krzysztof not a bad fighter. I just think he's a little bit overrated. He hasn't beat the elite fighter yet, which I don't even think he beat Misha Serkinov. And Gerald is kind of coin toss. Some of these guys like Eric Anders, you never know what you get from him. And he lost to Uriah Hall, and it's like he was winning the fight and he got knocked out in the second round. I think whenever he fights tougher competition, he loses. And he even got knocked out by Brad Tavares. When was the last time Brad knocked somebody out in the UFC? So Brad only knocked out 2 people. The first person he knocked out was Phil Baroni in 2011, and that fight should not have happened. Way past Phil Baroni's prime, which Brad does have a lot of knockout power. He doesn't really have a lot of knockouts in the UFC. For him to lose like that to Brad Tavares, I don't think he's elite. I don't think Krzysztof is elite. But that's what he does. He's known for his footwork, his movement. He's athletic with his legs, but his hands are kind of slow. Krzysztof is a weird type of athlete because he has the foot speed, but he don't have the hand speed. And he don't really throw a lot of punches. He throws like a lot of kicks. His takedown defense is 83%. So like he's a bad matchup for certain guys like the Gerald Meerschaerts and the Misha Serkinovs. Even though Misha took him down 5 times, he's still a bad matchup for some of these guys. I'm not saying the juice. Like Krzysztof ain't got the juice. He ain't got the it factor. He's good enough to be in the top 10, maybe like barely hanging on by one hand. But I can't see Krzysztof beating nobody in top 10. I can't see him beating nobody in top 15. But his opponent, Brandon Allen. Brandon, he's well-rounded. He can finish it on the feet. He can finish it on the ground. But that's really what he's known for, like his takedown, his grappling. They're both well-rounded, but it's going to be like striker versus grappler. Even though it's striker versus grappler, Brandon going to do a better job of mixing the two together, even though they're both well-rounded. But Brandon only 2 losses comes to Chris Curtis. And at the time, a lot of people were doubting Chris Curtis and Sean Strickland. And Sean is in top 5 now. Both of those guys train together. He's been beating everybody else. He even has a rear naked choke win over Kevin Holland. But I like Brandon Allen's style. In my opinion, he's definitely going to get this fight to the ground. He's definitely going to get this rear naked choke win. But the thing is, Krzysztof is good at avoiding that type of loss. Like Krzysztof may lose, but he's not going to lose where like he just got out grappled or out muscled. So Brandon Allen is going to have to mix up the striking and actually hurt him. Brandon hurt Sam Alvey. Sam Alvey was in the UFC 4 years longer than what it should have been. So like it's a good win for Brandon to have on his record. That's an extra win, but it really don't mean a lot because Sam is not the best fighter. Yeah, but he was able to hurt Sam Alvey, get the rear naked choke. Brandon's going to find a way to win. He's going to have to hurt Krzysztof first because he can't just take Krzysztof down. Brandon don't have nothing to worry about with Krzysztof because he don't really throw strikes and knock his opponent out. He just throws strikes to score points. But I think Brandon can take chances and look to land a right hand or a left hook just to cover distance to hurt Krzysztof. And then after he hurt him or drop him, he can go ahead and get the rear naked choke. Put some money in my bank because I'm putting money on Brandon Allen. 2nd round, rear naked choke. Next one is Joakim Silva versus Jesse Ronson. Fighter number 1 is Joakim Silva. He's 11-3. You seen one Joakim Silva fight, you seen them all. He fights one way. He backs his opponents down against the cage and he tried to land haymakers on his opponent. He has a lot of power, especially in his right hand. But I'm not seeing anything other than that. Yes, he can move around decent footwork. Yes, he's well-rounded. Yes, he's not the worst fighter, but he only has one way to win, and that's really on the feet and up close. He doesn't really fight good on the outside. And another thing is with Joakim, he's a slugger, so he's trying to get to a firefight with his opponent. And the fun thing is he's been knocked out a couple times. Yeah, the Ricci Glenn knockout happened kind of early, but the Nasrat fight, he just couldn't get going against Nasrat. And Nasrat was able to put together a game plan and keep him at bay and then eventually catch him with the left hand, which he'd been setting up the whole first round. But one thing with Joakim is he's not the most consistent guy because he alternates wins and losses. And it's weird because he knocked out Jared Gordon, and Jared is one of the toughest guys and more durable guys in the UFC. Yes, he's been knocked out a couple times, but this guy is extremely durable, extremely tough. Well, not one of the most durable guys in the UFC, but he's one of the more durable guys in the weight class. But his opponent is Jesse Ronson. I'm gonna be honest, I watched a lot of film on Jesse. I'm not too impressed with him. Yes, he's tough. Yes, he's stocky. He's strong. He's well-rounded. He's good on the ground. He has decent striking, but he hasn't won a fight in the UFC. And he's been in and out of the UFC since 2013. And if I'm gonna just be honest with you, I don't think he's UFC caliber. I don't think he's world-class caliber because even in the PFL, he fought a couple times and lost both of those times. I think he won one fight in the UFC, but they overturned it because he felt positive. And then his last fight against Rafa Garcia, he got submitted in the 2nd round. And the funny thing is, Rafa don't have no other finishes in the UFC. So he's not really known for finishing people in the UFC. All his wins come by decision. But the thing is with Jeff Ronson, what he does is he reads his opponent and he sets up his left hand, and he sets it up real good. And what he does is he might throw the left hand a couple times, but not at full power. But then when his opponent least expected, he'll throw it with full power, catch his opponent coming in, or just throw it and hurt his opponent. But the thing is, he can only win fights like that for so long. And if his opponent make a mistake, he can get on top and full him out and finish him from strikes, or he could take their back. So he's more opportunistic than anything, but I don't think he's good enough to be in the UFC if I'm gonna just keep it real. This fight, I'm not gonna spend too much time on it. I think Joakim was gonna win in the first round knockout. I don't think Jesse is UFC caliber. Similar bad numbers, bad statistics. Okay, we got Jessica Pena versus Tabatha Ricci. This is a tough one because we know Jessica Pena is the UFC veteran. She's been around a long time. She's almost like the gatekeeper in the division. She lost to 11-7 Danielle Taylor. The thing is, any fighter who can beat Jessica Pena is good enough to be in the UFC. Well, I'm not going to say good enough to be in the UFC, but good enough to be in the top 10, maybe top 15. But she's not a bad fighter. The thing is with Jessica, she's known for her ground game, and that's just it. I don't really see, they have style right here, kickboxing. I don't see too much. Like, she throws kicks, but she doesn't throw anything to finish her opponent. Like, she throws like kicks to push her opponent off her. Other than that, she don't really throw strikes to get her opponent out of there. And she throws strikes to get the fight to the ground. Like when she fought against Carolina had this fight won. All she had to do was avoid the ground because there's no way Jessica could have stood up with Carolina. But that's a good win against Lupita Godinez. Yeah, like I'm not too impressed with Jessica, if I'm gonna just be honest with you. Fighters like that who are one-dimensional can only win one way. They only get so far like that. Jessica is so bad at cutting her opponent off the cage. It almost looked like Jessica is ballroom dancing her opponent. It's like she's just straight following them, following their lead. It almost looked like she's purposely not trying to cut her opponent off. And Tabatha, I'm not too impressed with Tabatha either, to be honest. See, Tabatha is Brazilian and she's real dangerous on the ground. Like she fights very safe and very boring, which is not a bad thing. It's just I wouldn't really pay money to see her fight unless she got more aggressive. But her only loss comes to Manon Foro. I know I'm saying her name wrong. Yeah, and Manon she's 9-1 and she won 8 fights in a row. And her next fight is gonna be against Caitlin. I'm not gonna try to say her last name, but her next fight gonna be against Caitlin, so that's gonna be a good one. But she's undefeated in the UFC, so I don't really hold this fight against Tabatha, but I watch a lot of her fights and I'm not too impressed. At least she can cut her opponent off somewhat better than what Jessica can. Jessica is like she be going around in circles, follow the leader or something like that. Like, yeah, this video not gonna be too long. See, the thing is they both have real good ground game. The best way that they can win, but Tabatha has more ways to win. She can take her opponent down. She can control them. I'm not too impressed with any one of their striking. Tabatha's striking is a little bit better than Jessica and her movement is better. I'm predicting Tabatha to win a 3-round decision. So 60 wins. I thought it said 60 for Alexey's age. For the next fight, we have Ilir Latifi versus Alexey Oleynik. Ilir Latifi. Ilir is all over the place. He's normally a light heavyweight, but he's fighting at heavyweight now. He had issues at light heavyweight with being a little shorter for the division. I don't know why he went up to heavyweight, which he don't look bad at heavyweight. Maybe because his speed and his athletic ability, he'd be able to outwork some of his opponents. Ilir Latifi, 8 losses, which is a lot. But if you go and look at who he lost to, Derek Lewis, which I don't think he lost to Derek Lewis. Let's pull up the fight. Yes, Derek outstruck him, but Ilir was able to take him down. He took him down 3 times and controlled him for 8.5 minutes. So that's 2 rounds almost that Ilir was able to take him down and control him. So I don't think Ilir lost that fight to Derek Lewis, to be honest. I don't really hold it against him, which I know the UFC does because he lost technically, but in my opinion, he's undefeated in the heavyweight division, which I know another reason he probably went to heavyweight is because he's a big, strong, stocky guy. He probably had issues cutting weight. But he lost to Derek Lewis. He lost to a prime Volkan, Cory Anderson, who's tearing things up in Bellator. Ryan Bader, I don't know what he was thinking because he was winning against Ryan Bader. He made a mistake. Jan Blachowicz, former champion. Gegard Mousasi. Yeah, Ilir is not a horrible fighter. It's almost like his IQ is not where it should be. There are moments in fights where things happen that should not have happened. Like the knee Ryan Bader landed. That should not have landed. Like he should have won that fight easily against Ryan Bader. But the thing is with Ilir, it's almost like that's a certain level that he just can't get over when it comes to skill. So it's like that's a certain caliber where he's not good enough to beat those guys. He's fighting Alexey Oleynik. He's 60 years old. I mean, no, I'm just playing. No, but he's 60 and 16. He has 8 wins, 47 wins by submission, and 5 by decision, which is crazy. 47 wins by submission. 45 years old is, dang, it's crazy. Like, the fact that he's still fighting at 45 is crazy. His last fight against Jared Vanderaa, Jared had the fight won. All he had to do was stay off the ground. That's all he had to do. Avoid the ground with Alexey. Jared was on top of Alexey. It looked like he was trying to prove a point against Alexey, which he could have just stood up and just made a striking match. Because Alexey, even though he has some power, he ain't the fastest guy. He ain't the most athletic guy. He throw that right hand. You can make a phone call in the time that it takes him to land that right hand. That's how slow Alexey is. Yeah, his losses come by Sergey Spivak, Chris Dawkins, Derek Lewis, Walt Harris, Alistair Overeem. These are tough guys. So these are not bad. You never know what to get with Alexey Oleynik. He's real good on the ground. He has a real good scarf hold, and he has a real good Ezekiel choke where he can choke his opponent out from the bottom, which he has real good submissions everywhere. I can't pick a man that's 45 years old to win the UFC fight. It's amazing that he's still fighting this long. I'm gonna have to go with Ilir Latifi on this one. And the thing is with Ilir, sometimes he don't pull the trigger. He's just content just wrestling. I don't think he will want to wrestle Alexey Oleynik. He's gonna have to move around and keep the fight standing up, which he more than likely won't. He don't have the highest fight IQ, but if he can keep the fight standing, which he probably won't. But this fight, I don't know who's gonna win this one, but I can't pick a fighter who's 45 years old to win the UFC fight. But then Ilir is 39, so he's only 6 years younger. But I'm going to go with Ilir by second round knockout. Mike Davis versus Viacheslav Borshchev. Fighter number 1 is Mike Davis. 9-2, decent guy, decent fighter. What he really stands out is his boxing, his footwork, his movement, his athleticism. He has a lot of power, but he only showed it once in the UFC, and that was against Thomas Gifford. Yeah, he was able to land a left hand and a right hand over the top to put Thomas away. But in other fights prior to that, he showed he had some power, but he didn't really show devastating power. Yes, he had 7 KOs, but most of those came outside the UFC, which we know like the UFC is a different ball game. Yeah, but he has real good movement. And it's interesting because his opponent, Viacheslav, is like the opposite because he's not really known for his athletic ability, nor his speed or his movement. But the thing is, Mike Davis been inactive. He hasn't fought since January 2021. But like a lot of people are high on Mike Davis. He's extremely talented. If you take away that Gilbert Burns fight, and Gilbert is a tough fight for anybody. So if you take away that fight, he could easily be on a 4-fight win streak. But in all fairness, though, I don't think he won that last fight against Mason Jones. But it was extremely close. It looked like Mike Davis gassed out in the first round. Well, didn't gas out, but he started to slow down. And Mason was able to turn up in the second and third. The second and third were kind of close. His opponent, Viacheslav Borshchev, man, this guy is 6-2, 5 wins by knockout. I think this fight is going to be a technical war because both of these guys are powerful. Even though I think Viacheslav is more powerful, he actually can finish somebody out of nowhere, which he has done multiple times in the UFC. They're both also technical too. Neither one of these guys ever been knocked out, and neither one of these guys are just reckless. Viacheslav, he had a couple fights where he just embarrassed his opponent. He embarrassed Dakota Bush. He went to the body, put him away, backed him up against the cage, finished him to the body. He embarrassed Chris Duncan. He caught Chris coming in with a left hook, and he put Chris away. But that's the thing though, with Viacheslav, things have to be going his way for him to win, and his opponents have to make mistakes. I don't think Mike Davis fights that type of way. He don't really make a lot of mistakes in his fight. He does gas a little bit. He's very technical. Viacheslav has the knockout power advantage, but other than that, I don't see him winning this fight. It's not like Mike has been knocked out before and he has a bad chin. He has a real good chin. But they're a complete opposite. Mike Davis is athletic, more flashy, more faster, and Viacheslav is a little slower, a little bit more telegraph, a little bit more plotting. I think this is an easy fight for Mike Davis. I'm going to go with Mike Davis by 3-round decision. Castaneda versus Daniel Santos. This fight is a weird one. Honestly, I might be 50-50 with this one. But we have John Castaneda, 19-5, 8 wins by knockout, 6 by submission, and 5 by decision. Like, he has a lot of ways he can win. Fighters like that who are well-rounded, they throw their opponents off. And that's the difference between him and Daniel Santos, because Daniel is powerful, but Daniel, he only fights one way, and that's to knock his opponent out. And he's very good at that. He's very powerful, but John can mix it up, and he might be able to actually hurt Daniel too, because when John Castaneda fought against Eddie, he was able to Vito Belfort, Vanderlei Silva, Eddie Weiland, and just blitz him and finish him. That's the thing though, like John Castaneda, his only loss comes to Nathaniel Wood, and Nathaniel is on a tear right now, especially in his new weight class in the featherweight division. Just beat Charles Jourdain. John Castaneda, very patient, very calculated, very measured. He doesn't force anything. He doesn't fight the way his opponent wants him to fight. He sticks to his game plan. Southpaw, real good jab. And that's the thing. If you're going to look at Daniel Santos' last fight against Julio Arce, All Julio did was move around and throw a jab, and he didn't engage in no firefight. He didn't engage in no brawl with Daniel Santos, because if he would have, he would have got knocked out. That's the thing with Daniel Santos. Yes, he's 8-2. He only has 2 losses, but I don't like to bet on fighters who hasn't won a fight in the UFC, because these fighters, they look like world beaters outside the UFC. In the UFC, they can barely get 1 win, if that. Yeah, he's very powerful. Daniel Santos, he throws a lot of spinning kicks, spinning elbows. Like, he throws like a lot of Hail Mary strikes that if they land, he can knock his opponent out. He's real good at blitzing his opponent and throwing heavy hooks. But the problem with his style is he's kind of predictable. Any fighter with decent footwork can avoid that. And that's the thing, like, these guys are bantamweights. Like, this is not light heavyweight, and light heavyweight fighters can get away with that because those guys are bigger and they're not as skilled. But fighters in the bantamweight division, they're smaller and they're more skillful. So, like, he has to have a better game plan and have more ways to win, because all these guys in the bantamweight division are tough. But I think John Castaneda is the future of the bantamweight division. Yeah, he's very talented. I like his measured style. And this one is an easy one for me. I think John can win in the majority of different ways. But one thing I forgot to say about John is, like, he's very unpredictable with his takedowns. And that's how he catch a lot of his opponents off guard with it, because they never know when he's going to shoot. And he has real good arm triangles. I think he's going to put Daniel Santos away with an arm triangle. My prediction is the more unpredictable and measured John Castaneda is going to win in the second round by arm triangle. Sodiq Yusuff fighting Don Shainis on short notice. To be honest, there's not really a lot to say about this fight. I did like a lot of footage on Don Shainis. He's real good at what he does. He has real good takedowns. He's good at taking his opponent down and ground and pounding them. Almost how Chris Weidman was in Chris Weidman's prime. He used to take down opponents and just finish them. Yeah, but other than that, I think this fight will be a blowout. And yes, Dunn is tough. He's taking this fight on short notice. Yes, he's won 5 fights in a row. I saw some of his fights, and some of his fights he was losing until he came back and took his opponent down and finished him on the ground. Or either his opponent would make a mistake and he would sweep him and finish him from strikes. And some of the fights, some of the ground and pound he did, some of the finishes were stopped prematurely. So some of his win he probably shouldn't have. But I mean, that's not his fault. Like, he fought great, but I'm not really impressed with his striking, with his hands. But like, he has a ton of heart. Like, he's a tough guy. I like him. Like he's kind of short, but he's stocky. He's real strong. I don't give him no chance against Sodiq. Sodiq is 12-2, 6 wins by knockout. No submission wins, which he don't need it. I don't think he needs submission. And the thing is, he only has 1 loss in the UFC, and that's to Arnold Allen. And if I'm gonna just be real, I don't even think he lost to Arnold Allen. He outstruck him 47-21. Sodiq got hurt the first round. He got knocked down, but in the second round, he outstruck Arnold, and in the third round, he outstruck him, but he got control a little bit more in the third round. But he clearly lost the first round. The question is, was it 10-8? I think Sodiq is undefeated in the UFC. The only thing is with Sodiq, sometimes, even though he has a bunch of knockouts, he probably should have, out of his 12 wins, he probably should have 12 knockouts. But sometimes he could be a little bit timid, and sometimes he don't pull the trigger like he's supposed to. He's really kind of boring to watch. It's crazy, somebody as powerful and explosive as Sodiq, he only has 2 knockouts in the UFC, which is not bad. He has 6 wins in the UFC and only 2 knockouts, which he should have 6 knockouts. Ain't no point in going too deep into this one. I think Sodiq is going to stuff the takedowns and get Don Shainis out of there. I'm not impressed with Don striking at all. In the UFC, you got to have better striking than that. He's UFC caliber, but I don't think he can beat somebody on the caliber of Sodiq. So I'm going by Sodiq second round knockout. Next one, we have Raoni Barcelos versus Trevin Jones. Raoni, he's known for his knockout power in his right hand. He has devastating right hooks, devastating right uppercuts, and he also is very technical. He's 16-3. 8 of his wins come by knockout, 2 by submission, and 6 by decision. His last fight against Victor Henry didn't go his way. It looked like Victor, his volume and his cardio was enough to overwhelm Raoni Barcelos. I don't think Raoni Barcelos expected Victor to be that good, which there's no excuses in sports, but he was such a big favorite against Victor. I don't think he took him seriously. The thing is, Victor was able to turn up on him, especially at the end of each round, just unload and outwork Xiaonan Barcelos. I don't think Trevin Jones has that style to do that against Xiaonan. That's what Xiaonan's known for, is his knockout power, his technical prowess. Prior to his loss to Timur, he was undefeated in the UFC. So he had won 5 fights in a row. But it's interesting because Timur is a common opponent they both have. But the thing is, Trevin actually stopped Timur. Trevin Jones, he tested positive for marijuana. Yeah, but Trevin Jones, he was able to hurt Timur with a right hand, drop him, and finish him from strikes. Yeah, Trevin Jones, he's 13-8. One thing I don't like is the 8 losses. But one thing that stands out with Trevin Jones is he's very durable. He has no knockout losses. When he fought against Saeed Yakub, he was done. Like, he was done after the first round, but he showed so much heart. He showed how tough he was. He eventually got submitted in the 3rd round, but he showed that he was a warrior and he was mentally strong. But 8 losses is still a lot of losses, especially in the bantamweight division, where all the fighters in the bantamweight division want to be in the top 15. But Trevin last fight was against Javid. Javid put on a striking display, and he really fought safe and smart, but it was still brilliant. Like, footwork brilliant, jab brilliant. And he really didn't allow Trevin to do anything. But the thing is, with Trevin, he does have a lot of knockout power, especially in his right hand. Like, he's a southpaw, but he has a lot of power in his right hook. And it looked like a couple times Trevin was barely missing Javid, but it is what it is. He still lost. But prior to that, he lost to Saeed Yakub. And the thing is, with Trevin Jones, he showed it against Saeed Yakub. A lot of times his go-to move is his wrestling. And you can tell, like, when he gets tired, wrestle, clinch. When he gets hurt, wrestle, clinch. So it's like, that's not a bad thing, but I would like to see Trevin Jones mix things up a little bit more, because his striking ain't bad. Like, he moves well. Like, he has potential. It's just sometimes he don't let his hands go like he's supposed to. And another thing I noticed with Trevin Jones, he's more comfortable when his opponent's back is against the cage and he's unloading on them. So Trevin is one of those strikers where he would prefer for his opponent to be standing still. It's almost like Trevin struggles against opponents who move around, where it's difficult for him to land on. Another thing is with Trevin Jones is he's a flip coin, because he was able to finish, of all people, Mario Bautista. So he was able to finish Timur, finish Mario Bautista. And those are elite guys, because Timur beat Xiaonan Barcelos. Yeah, but Trevin is a coin flip. You don't know what to expect from him. The more and more I look into this fight, the more I think Xiaonan Barcelos is going to win. Because even in Xiaonan's last fight against Victor Henry, it was real close. It just looked like Victor was able to pull away slightly, but I don't think Trevin has that style. And I don't think Trevin can take down Xiaonan Barcelos. But my prediction in this fight is, honestly, I won't be surprised if Xiaonan get a knockout. My prediction, because the thing is, Trevin is real tough. My prediction is, I'm going to say it, a Xiaonan by 2nd round knockout. Fight night 211. The co-main event, we have Randy Brown versus Francisco Trinaldo. It's crazy. Francisco is 44 years old. He's still around and he's still pushing. But first fighter, Randy Brown, he's known for being tall, long, athletic, long arms, unpredictable in a good way. Well, you never know what kind of strike he's going to throw. He has decent takedowns. He can get the fight to the ground. He's not really a wrestler, but he's real nice on the ground. He has real good jiu-jitsu. He has 15 wins, 6 wins by knockout, 5 by submission, and 4 by decision. The Chaos Williams fight in his last fight, I don't think he won. He got knocked down late in the 3rd. Yeah, but he was able to outstrike Chaos 93 significant strikes to 75. Randy Brown, he has top 15 talent. But the problem is, if you go look at the UFC rankings and look at the top 15, even if you look at fighters from 11 to 15, Michael Pereira, Daniel Rodriguez, Neil Magny, Michael Chiesa, Shavkat. I don't think none of those guys are going to be outside the top 15. I think all the fighters in top 15 are going to stay there. But it's up to Randy Brown to get a finish against Francisco, because sometimes Randy Brown, he could be a little timid and he could be a little bit gun shy, and sometimes that could be a good thing because he's 6'3", he's long, so like you want him to fight smart and use his range and his length. But then again, if you want him to enter the top 15 of the UFC's welterweight division, you want him to go and get a little bit more aggressive like he did against Brian Barberena. So he's one of the very few fighters who finished Brian Barberena, and that's the thing, like he has the talent to finish a lot of guys. It's just sometimes sometimes he just don't pull the trigger like he's supposed to. But his opponent is the 44-year-old veteran Francisco Trinaldo. 28 wins, 9 by knockout, 5 by submission, 14 by decision. That's what's weird with Francisco, because it's like sometimes his knockout power will be there, other times it doesn't be there. And I don't know what the deal is, but he's known for his Muay Thai. He's a southpaw. He's known for his left hand. He has a lot of power in his left hand. He throws knees, he throws elbows. He's just trying to get on the inside and hurt his opponent. And sometimes he even take his opponents down. But obviously he's not going to take down no elite fighter. Any fighter with decent wrestling, he's not going to take him down. But he can take down like mediocre fighters. But he's on a 2-fight win streak. Last loss came to Muslim Sakalov. The thing is with Francisco, sometimes he give up a lot of rounds. He was losing to Ja Herbert, and that was Ja making his UFC debut. And he came back and knocked Ja out in the 3rd round. He does give up rounds sometimes. He doesn't really throw high volume because he doesn't have the best gas tank. If I'm Randy Brown, I'm getting Francisco into the 3rd round and I'm finishing him. I don't think Francisco can meet the caliber of fighter as Randy Brown. But my prediction in this fight is Randy Brown by 3-round decision in the event of UFC Fight Night 211. We have Mackenzie Dern versus Xiaonan. This fight is very important because there are title implications. Carla Esparza is a strawweight champion. Then you have Mackenzie ranked number 5. And you have Xiaonan ranked number 6. So the winner out of this fight might have a number 1 contender fight. And then the winner of that fight might fight for the belt. And this division is all over the place right now, especially after Carla's last fight against Rose, where nothing really happened. They might be trying to get Carla out of there, to be honest, unless she can perform better against Wei Lee. It'll be a good fight. I'm expecting a better performance from Carla. We have Mackenzie Dern, who's 12-2. I think Mackenzie is elite because if you go and look at her last loss, it came against Marina Rodriguez. And Marina is that chick right now. I think she's going to be champion one day. Marina's only loss comes to Carla, the current champion. So like that's not a bad loss to have against Marina, who's now won 4 in a row. Mackenzie Dern, decent striking, but her bread and butter is on the ground where she has a bunch of submissions, arm bars, rear naked chokes. She can get her opponent out of there if the fight hit the ground, but she also can win the decision because she has 5 wins by decision, 7 by submission. I think her striking is a little bit underrated, but she does have a lot of power in her right hand. And some of her submission wins she knocked her opponent down and then jumped on top of them and finished them with submissions. But she has a lot of power in her hand. The power might be the deciding factor against Xiaonan because Xiaonan doesn't really have a lot of power. Xiaonan, she has great volume. She has some speed. Nothing Mackenzie has to be worried about. The thing is with Xiaonan throws a bunch of punches, but it doesn't seem like she lands a lot. But it says that Xiaonan, she lands 5.66 strikes per minute, which is crazy high. It's almost double of Mackenzie Dern. She absorbs only 3.77 strikes per minute, and she has a high striking defense. But it seems like even though she lands 5.66 strikes per minute, it seems like she's throwing like 20. She's only landing like 5.66. Like she's accurate, she's 42%, but only because she's throwing a lot of strikes. I don't think Mackenzie is going to be worried about her striking, and to be honest, I think Mackenzie is going to be worried about her hands and her speed, but not really her striking. I think Mackenzie Dern can hurt Jan. And to be honest, I'm not really the biggest Mackenzie Dern fan. I've always been a Xiaonan fan. I've made like a lot of money off her, especially early on in her career. She's like on the rough patch right now. But that's the thing with Xiaonan, like she lost to Marino, the same fighter Mackenzie lost to, and she lost to the current champion Carla. These are not bad losses for any of these fighters. But if I'm Mackenzie, even though I think Mackenzie is confident she can stand up with Xiaonan, I'm getting this fight to the ground as fast as possible. You don't want to risk getting hurt by Xiaonan. She has some power, not devastating power, but some power. Even though Xiaonan hasn't knocked nobody out in the UFC, she has some power. But when they first announced this fight, even though I'm a big Xiaonan fan, in the back of my head, I just thought this was a bad matchup for Xiaonan. Xiaonan had his one fight against Carla where she got taken down multiple times. Yeah, Carla took her down 3 times, controlled her for over 7 minutes. Eventually, she ground and pounded her in the second round. But if you got taken down by Carla is a good wrestler. Carla's probably the best wrestler in the division, but her MMA wrestling is not the best. Sometimes she can't really set it up as good as she should. So if you got taken down by Carla, you definitely can get taken down by Mackenzie. The thing is, if you get taken down by Mackenzie Dern, you might not be able to get up. But I think Mackenzie is going to fight smart. She's going to get this fight to the ground. Yeah, but I like both fighters. more so Xiaonan, but I think the better fighter is Mackenzie Dern. I think she's more elite. I think she's going to be in the top 5. She's going to stay in the top 5. I don't think Xiaonan can beat any other fighter in the top 5. Yeah, she cannot beat Whaley. She can beat Rose. She already lost to Marina, and she definitely can't beat Jessica Andrade. Yeah, but this is a striker versus grappler matchup. I'm going to go with the grappler because I think Mackenzie might have better striking too than Xiaonan, but it'd be risky for her to keep standing up with her. But my prediction is Mackenzie by second round submission.
Like this video and subscribe.